Good afternoon, Nate. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me in
No
your
worries.
unlit office.
Yeah, we're getting that soft afternoon light. Nate, you're the president of ALIRA,
Yep.
the Australian Labor. You tell us what it stands for.
The Australian Labor and Employment Relations Association.
Fabulous. And immediate past president of IRSQ, the Industrial
Correct.
Relations Society of Queensland.
Yes.
It's great to have you as a guest on our vlog. Last time Joe and I had a chat about the post-election IR reform agenda. One of the big ticket items was the restraint of trade clauses, particularly non-competes. So we'll probably expect to see some action in that space, I would have thought, without any real delay.
I think we're still waiting for priorities for the government to be settled, as in broadly across all portfolios. I think in workplace relations, it's clear the priorities from the parliamentary perspective were penalty rates. So I don't know whether it's safe to expect action on restraints of trade or other restraints.
Yep.
Soon. Not sure the review through Treasury is done. It's obviously a pretty complicated question, but I'd say we'd have to wait until after that before
true.
you saw movement.
One of the drivers for this particular policy was to improve competition. Non-competes in particular were hampering that kind of freedom of movement and competition and possibly wage growth.
It's more of a productivity thing in the end. So you'll have seen, speaking of wage review earlier, President Hatcher inquiring into productivity of employers in particular and saying, what are you doing besides cost cutting? And this is a potential measure. Again, not an economist, but understand there are economic pluses to something like this. The movement of knowledge between businesses is a productivity enhancer potentially. So I think if, depending on where the productivity overview falls, because this was part of the competition review, I think, will probably depend on how much of a priority it ultimately becomes. But I think there's probably, broad agreement amongst at least academics that these kinds of clauses can inhibit productivity and competition.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, there's much to be said. As you and Joe adverted to, though, obviously there are protections that these clauses represent for business.
Indeed.
And it's identifying the middle ground there.
For our client base and the kinds of industries that we work in, they're fairly broad, but particularly in the professional services space, there is concern. So that might be engineers, it might be lawyers, it might be architects, it might be consultants. Certainly the concern is that they do train and invest because it's an important part of improving productivity. They'll make that investment and the risk is that person will go off and leave and take not just that investment, but the knowledge and information about how to do business or how to do this particular, how they do that particular job.
It's the negative potential productivity implication of something like this. For business to invest, they want certainty, and you don't get certainty if you can't enforce your rights.
True.
Even if these clauses don't exist, there are still some rights there. Like you've got your common law claims, you've got statutory claims under
Section 183.
corpse powers and things like that.
Yeah.
They're really hard to deal with, but so are restraints.
Indeed. Yep.
So there's pluses and minuses with almost everything.
Yeah.
In almost everything we do, both sides have to accept you can't have a perfect run at it.
Yeah.
You've got to do the best you can with what you got.
Non-solicitation may well be the space that there is still some sort of preservation of the existing thinking around, you can't, pinch my clients directly and entice them away.
Yeah, I think that falls into the it's clearer that you're doing something wrong category. Solicitation is a big no-no, and the same with the confidential information. You'll see in the issues papers in the competition review, there was very little attention given to that, in my opinion. Probably because it was just kind of a given that if you have the confidential information of a business, it's almost taken for granted you should not be dealing with it.
Respect that.
So it's really just the question of, well, what is confidential information? If I just happen to know how to be very good at customer service, that's no one's confidential information.
Yes.
But if I know in particular the unique way that you
Workflow
do
or-
something
Yeah.
which happens to make your business
the
very
combination
special.
punches, you know, to get
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
to
exactly.
get the deal. I don't know if that's completely mixed metaphors, but you get it.
I'll take all
Yeah.
the metaphors you got.
Yeah. All right. Well, mindful that we're very quickly
Descending into darkness.
Exactly, descending into darkness. Great dramatic way to put it. The city is lighting up in the windows
Yeah.
just beyond the camera. So
You'll have to show everyone the
lovely.
view.
Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay.